This is a plan that was agreed to by 179 nations. It's called the Agenda for the 21st Century. It's a totalitarian state being developed right now all over the world. It is the inventory and control plan. Inventory and control of all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all food, all energy, all information, and all human beings in the world.
We must not miss this unique window of opportunity.
Reading from the COVID-19 The Great Reset book, Klaus Schwab and his co-author, if no one power can enforce order, our world will suffer from a global order deficit.
Farrell and I did a great 2-hour interview called Who is Mr. Global? Mm-hmm. And we went through every different hypotheses.
What do you mean? Can you define Mr. Global?
It's the committee that runs the world. So there's a committee at the top that makes all the big decisions. And my nickname for it is Mr. Global. So the question is, who is Mr. Global and why is Mr. Global doing what he's doing?
Did world leaders really lay out this globalist plan in plain English in a physical book way back in 1991? I went on Amazon, and there it was. The First Global Revolution, which states, and I quote, "In searching for a common enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill, and therefore, the real enemy is humanity itself."
You are at A, and you know that your agenda is going to take the world to Z. But you know if you go from A to Z in too big a leap, the changes in society are going to be so fundamental that many people are going to look up from the game show and the sport, and they're going to say, "What's going on? Ethel, what's going on here? Look what they're doing." So you don't go in big leaps. You use the totalitarian tiptoe. You go as fast as you can, but not so fast that people start to see the pattern and realize that it's all connected. So you'll go from A to B, and maybe go to D if you can get away with it, and so on. But all the time, you're moving towards this Z goal, which is total human control.
If you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built might be small. Many people in their 40s and 50s discover that their investments have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. Listen, protecting what you've already built is just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments comes in, helping you reduce risk by adding physical gold to your portfolio. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmicks, just clear answers and a strategy built around your goals. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Friday, January 30th, 2026. It's an evening show, a rare Friday night show, and we're going out of the matrix into prime reality, asking some of the biggest questions, or maybe one of the biggest questions out there, which is why? Why in the world is there a massive, worldwide, beyond world actually, conspiracy going on to truly, completely control and enslave humanity? And by now, so many people realize that there is something massive happening. In the last few days, following this catastrophic ice storm, that in and of itself, the storm itself wasn't so catastrophic, but the aftermath. For example, you still have about 100,000 people in the Nashville metropolitan area that are without power and going to be for longer periods of time. And millions of people are watching videos online and discussing the fact that weather, and this kind of weather, and the snow and the ice are modified, are engineered, are not real. And millions of people are going down the weather modification, geoengineering, climate engineering rabbit hole. And they're asking the same question sooner or later. Why? Like, why are people or powerful people doing this. Then, they follow and they fall into the next rabbit hole, and they go into the fact that we're now finding with, absolute certainty that all of us, all living beings and all human beings appear to have nanotechnology already in them, in us, whether they received the medical intervention or not. And they're asking the question, why? They're going and diving deep into the extreme manipulation of world politics, of world finance. They are following falling into the rabbit holes of secret societies. They're falling into the rabbit hole of big pharma, big tech, big ag, big food, big everything. And everywhere they go, they find a conspiracy, if they look long enough, against humanity. Eventually, they ask, why? Why is this really happening? And this is the question that we want to ask, and at least in part answer today. And I'll go through the biggest conversations that I've had with people that are oftentimes familiar with a lot of these conspiracies. Many of them are addicted to researching conspiracy. They get a thrill out of connecting all these dots and looking at the global cult and looking what they do. And they get a lot of things right. But they crash against the big wall of why. So very often they say it's about power. They say, Jean, it's about power. I say, really? Where don't they have power? The entities, and we're going to get to that, the entities, and please stick around because the realization is incredibly empowering. The entities that are in control of the power system of the world have invented those very systems, and they own those very systems. Now, that's a big thing to say, but it's a true thing to say. Do you know why these powerful, and I'm talking about really the people that you usually don't know their names. Do you know why they don't fear wars? Because they finance and support both sides or every side of every war. If you finance and support every side of every war, you cannot lose. You can never lose. They don't fear political parties because they own the very system that political parties operate in. They have invented those systems. They have invented the very concept of authority, of artificial hierarchy and power in our world. That's what they've been building over millennia and perfecting. It's not about power. They have that power everywhere where people believe in those systems, which is pretty much everyone. And I'm saying this, sort of, let's say 90% of people in one way, shape, or form believe in those power structures and authorities. And what they also believe is the illusion that within those power structures, it truly matters who is in charge. What they don't see is that somebody owns power itself, not a party, a politician, a government, an agency. It doesn't matter. See, communism is not the goal here, but it's a means to an end. Capitalism is not the goal. It's not the conspiracy, but it's a means to an end. Socialism is. All these forms don't really represent different ideologies. They just represent different pathways. Doesn't matter what the pathway is, as long as the pathway leads in the same direction. So power is not what these folks are after. They have it. So then the next thing is it about money? Because, for example, when I talk to people who have all their lives observed corruption, all their lives observed the wrongdoings and the crimes, they go, yeah, it's all about money, right? And on one level, a lower level, yeah, it is about money. But that's a very low level. The higher you go up the ladder, the more you realize, once again, they own the belief system of money because they created it. Money doesn't mean a thing to them other than that you and I and everybody else believes in the concept of money, the necessity of money, and virtually the impossibility of life within society without it. Currencies don't matter to them. Whether one currency goes out and another currency comes in, or one form of money where at some point money used to be precious metals, gold was money, silver was money, that has changed to a representation. When you go back and you see, well, they started issuing debt notes, if you will, that you could then exchange back for gold and silver, and then that was detached, and that paper, that numbers were printed on, became nothing, absolutely nothing, but a belief system. They own that belief system, just like they own the capability to issue, or I should say print credit, a debt-based system. Once you understand how the system operates, it's not about money. They own money. They own every mechanism of money. They own every way to make money off of money, and they own every way to produce or take money away. That's not what this is about. It's not about money. It's not about power. They have all that. So then is it about control? And here we're really diving deeper into the essence, into the heart of the question. Yes, it is about control, but not in the way that most people think about it. In the distant, or maybe not so distant past, but from our perspective, before our lifetime, and before maybe 2-3 generations ago, it was very, very common that openly one class of people physically controlled another class of people to extract labor from them. It didn't always have to be straight out slavery, but it was one form of that. And it was very openly lived like that. And it was not something that was hidden or that was scandalous. It was what it was, right? And so that form of control still exists. It still exists. And in some places in the world, it's more prevalent, and others not so much anymore. But that form of control has shifted. And what is this control about? Is it about controlling us physically, controlling our movements, controlling what we do? Yes, but only for a very specific reason. We don't need to be controlled any longer to extract unbelievable amounts of labor from us, because that's now being replaced, as you know, by technology, by robotics, by AI, by all of that. So that's not necessary any longer. So if it's not about that kind of control, what else can be controlled in a human being? Well, what is really mostly discussed today in the world by governments, by bodies of government, by the European Union, by agencies within all governments of the world, is how they can better control and steer what we are thinking. And here we're getting to the crux of this. Why would it be necessary to control what humans are thinking? And speaking from their perspective, what is needed to make that happen? So now you go back out to where we started and look at all the various conspiracies and what these various conspiracies all have in common. Look at the food, poisoning in the food, the air, the water. What does this do to our ability to think, to discern, to critically analyze, to come to our own conclusions? When we are poisoned, at the same time we are depleted of the very nutrients that this avatar needs. At the same time, you have electromagnetic frequencies, and you have all the economic burdens that are constantly being tightened. So you create very, very consciously an environment where our ability, our time to think, our ability to discern is brought down to a very low level. But why? Once again, why? What is the end goal here? Well, the next stage in this agenda is one of the next stages is the interconnectedness of all things. So the internet of everything, if you will, which if you go forward a few more steps, and it is beginning to happen, it brings us into a hive mind, which the current internet and the interconnectedness of the social media platforms and the gathering of all that information and the fact that so much of our lives is happening through this medium already in a way exists, this hive mind, but it is not completed yet. Not all facets, not everything is in it yet, and not everything is controlled by it yet. But that is most certainly the goal. Again, why? And we can't explain it with power. We can't explain it with money. We can't explain it with territorial greed because somebody wants more land. None of this is what it's about. We can't explain it if we stay in the realm of 3D and what we can see and what we can hear and what we can taste. We have to go beyond this realm to understand what it's about. We're not talking about human beings concocting these plans to control other human beings. While human beings are a part of it, as they're being used, manipulated, deceived, blackmailed, enticed in any way possible to do this to one another, they're not at the top of the pyramid. At the top of this pyramid is a life force, or an entity, beings that apparently cannot take the same form as we can and possess the same energy as we do. But they seem to need it. They seem to need the life force that we have and the energy that we have. Literally, I'm not talking about symbolically, to literally feed off of it like parasites do. What does a parasite need? A parasite cannot sustain itself. It needs a host, and it uses the host's life force and energy to feed itself and procreate and expand. And much like that, at the top of this pyramid, in realms that we cannot see, from which all of this is orchestrated, there is a force that is feeding and feasting on our energy, on our creativity, on our life force that we give off. And it is creating all these circumstances from its perspective, optimal conditions so that we give off that energy. That's why they studied us. That's why they manipulate us. It's basically what we do to chickens, for example, right? Inhumane and barbaric when you look at the mass production of eggs or chicken meat, where people are only interested in how much they can get out of the chicken, nothing else matters. So they create the conditions that gives them the most from that chicken, either the most eggs or the most meat in the shortest amount of time, and they don't care about anything else because that is the unit of energy that they want to, or they need to sustain themselves. To those entities, we are farm animals. We are the sustenance, and they create the conditions that help them the most. But it doesn't work when we pass a threshold of realization of who we are. So this only works as long as we believe in all these systems of hierarchy and authority, and as long as we believe that all this is true and real and necessary. And we go through the motions that every human being goes through, and we suffer all the tragedies that all human beings who believe themselves to be solely human beings suffer through, day in, day out. That is how this game works. And so when somebody, and it is by God, it's not just me. There were many people before us that talked about it. There's many people right now, and there will be more people that talk about it. When they sit or stand somewhere and they look you in the eye, or they look into a camera and they say, the most important thing of your life is to discover that that which you believe yourself to be is not who you really are. When they say that, they say it because they know that that is literally the solution to every single fucking problem that we're seeing all around us. That is the solution. That's not one step towards the solution. It's not, this is the journey of 1,000 steps and this is the first steps. No, this is the solution. It is the solution. It's not a new party. It's not 50 more organizations. All that is okay. I'm not speaking against it. It all has its place as long as it knows, as long as these organizations know what they're doing it for. Unfortunately, most of them don't. They see the conspiracy, but they can't see the true why. They can't see that it's their very unknown identity. They don't know their own identity, their own true beingness. But that is the part that these conspirators, perpetrators are after and have been after. It's a parasitic energy, a parasitic entity that needs our energy. So how do we not give it to them? How do we starve it? Well, it needs a certain kind of energy within a frequency range that is between anger, suffering, sadness, depression, fear, worry, doubt, guilt, shame, regret, everything on the lower end of the scale of consciousness, if you will. Everything that's on this lower end, that's the Big Mac menu for them. That's what they need. That's the Whopper. Does that make any sense when you look at where most of the world has been kept? Always between those energies. And it doesn't really matter whether some countries are economically more developed. It doesn't change the fact that most people go back and forth on that lower spectrum because of the way that this society was constructed, that this whole system was constructed, because of the way that this world runs on trauma and fear and violence. And it doesn't always have to be physical, by the way. And it only works because we believe ourselves to be limited beings. Why would you need to be greedy or violent or abusive if you know that you are infinite at your essence, that you are a divine being? Why would you ever need any of those things? You wouldn't. Because you would not believe in those limitations. You would not believe that you only get 70, 80, 90 years, and that's all there is to it, and you need to get as much out of it as possible. You wouldn't believe that. You couldn't believe that. And so the big why is your life force. It's your energy. That's on their menu. And as long as you believe in that, as long as you believe that you are, see, you don't have to interact with the world. You don't have to even be visible to the world. Your energy is visible to them. So when you sit in your apartment, or you sit in your car, or you sit in your wherever you sit, and you sit in misery, and you feel sorry for yourself, and you believe that life is against you, and that there's nothing that you can do, and that you are just this poor little being, you are literally being feasted on at that very moment. And you know it because you feel depleted, you feel sucked out of life, you feel void of life. There's a reason why you feel that way. And there's a reason why people who discover this, people who discover who they truly are, don't feel that, because they don't give their energy any longer. And this is why the greatest programs in the world are all aimed at controlling what you think and how you see the world and how you believe the world to be. And these folks don't matter who you fear as long as you fear. They don't care who you fear. It doesn't matter to them as long as you fear. It doesn't matter to them who you're angry at as long as you're angry. It does not matter to them who you blame as long as you blame. It doesn't matter. You might think it matters, that all these different teams and divisions and boxes actually matter, but they don't. They're different expressions of the exact same force. And the as good and as important as it is that all the information is circulating about all the conspiracies, which is ultimately only one conspiracy, as much as it matters that people are doing that, they're running in circles because they don't ask the why. They don't think it through, and they don't feel it through. They don't feel their way through it. Why do you think that at the highest level of these human and secret society organizations, you run into the same thing over and over again? These folks don't subscribe to any of the religions that most people do. It's not Judaism, it's not Christianity, it's not Islam, it's not Hinduism, it's none of that. They worship and give themselves and have sacrifices, ritualistic sexual abuses, killings. They do all of that. To whom and why? Well, to this dark entity that I just described. That's who they worship. That's who they get their orders from. And only if you can see that part do any of the choices that are being made down the chain of authority make any sense. The most common theme in my life that I have heard other people say in any country of the world, doesn't matter where, when it gets to politics and government and decisions, most people say nobody in their right mind would have ever acted like that or decided things like that, pointing at their own governments. Every single time, they can't even understand why any representative in government would decide the way that they do. Of course they can't understand, because they think that these folks are representing them and they're for their highest interest. That is the fairy tale that's been sold to the people. When that person who just made the decision that nobody understands, nobody can understand in their right mind, is working for something, a completely different kind of entity. They might not know it, but they are. So what is the empowering part about this? The empowering part about this is you don't have to work for a huge movement that's going to bring a new leader into the spotlight. We don't have to unplug and disassemble the systems. We don't have to do anything monumental and revolutionary out there. We have to transcend the limitation of our own perception about ourselves. You have been trapped into a little tiny program within this little tiny body and a way of looking at yourself that is false. That is it. That is it. I've told you this. I've been telling you this. We've been talking about this. Christine and I have seen this over and over and over again. Everybody that ever showed up on Christine's doorstep when she was coaching people one-on-one, everybody that ever showed up at a seminar or retreat who truly wanted to change their lives for the better had sooner or later a breakthrough experience. And it was always the same thing that showed up. When they experienced even a tiny bit of who they really are, their entire life, their entire perception began to shift. They could see for the first time, oh my God, this has always been here. It's been locked away from me. It's been hidden from me. I don't know how that was possible, but I could never see it before, but now I can. And now imagine what it took, the kind of effort on all levels that it took, that we're now discussing a system, an artificial intelligence system that is capable of not only seeing, registering every human being and every plant and every transaction and everything, but that for the first time, the capability within our understanding is here to directly manipulate our thinking. Directly, not indirectly, not through a medium, not through a movie or through psyops or media, but directly. Do you know how powerful you have to be so that such a system was created, and all the pain that it took to make it happen, and all the God knows how much infrastructure needed to be built and how many people needed to get together to make that happen? It's like, if that does not tell you how powerful you are, I'm not talking about some of you. I'm not talking about a special kind of you. You, everybody, you who's watching. That's how powerful you are. That's the why. They know they're dealing with expressions of divinity. You have forgotten it. That's the problem. You and I, we were programmed to forget it, but they know. That's what they're after. That's what they want to harness. That's what they want to feast on. But they can't have you know it, because once you do, you're not giving it away any longer. You're not offering it. You're not letting yourself be sucked out of it. And so, if this comes to full fruition, it will not only create a control system, a very perfect one within this realm, but it will create a perfect perception control system for a perpetual recycling until even that isn't necessary any longer. And that is all happening within the span of a few short decades. What I mean by that is, the idea is that you are going to be attached and tethered to this realm indefinitely for sustenance. Look at the language. Look at the language out there. What has made a big comeback? The chain. Everything is going on the blockchain. Do you think this is happenstance, coincidence? Everything is going on the chain. It's because we're supposed to be chained, to be tethered, to be attached to this realm indefinitely. By getting rid of this body, and believe it or not, but the expiration of this body is actually a blessing. After a good life lived, it's a blessing that you get to detach from this body and make a new choice. But once you are permanently attached to this realm, because not only does the body not expire any longer, but it's not the body that you're attached to, but it is a different life form connected to a hive mind. Now, the conversation that we're having is not happening any longer because you're not capable of having it. The very act of discovering who you really are doesn't even come up as an idea any longer. That's the real final goal. A perpetual battery, a perpetual energy source that never leaves, never dies. It's always there and held in optimal condition. It sounds horrible. It sounds like the darkest plan possible because it is. But it doesn't stand a chance against divinity that knows its divinity. Zero. It's game over in that very instance. Game over. So all of these discussions about all of these conspiracies, if they don't lead to the discovery of who you really are, they're completely worthless. This is what it's all about. It's like when you do, it's almost like you have not really existed before. It's like the life that you had is so, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it is so tiny compared to what you really are. And the reason why this is so on my heart is because things are moving rapidly, very, very rapidly. And all it takes is the desire to snap out of it. That's all that it really takes. Because as you can see, nobody has a big problem, a really big problem with people rooting for one side or the other. There's not a big problem in this world. It's not a big problem if you go to the far left or the far right party, or if you do this. Oh, that's not really a big problem. You just have to subscribe to a team. When you become teamless, when you become partyless, when none of that shit matters to you any longer. Not because everybody in those systems is bad, because they're not. There's a lot of good people in those systems, thankfully so. But because you realize that you don't want to play the game any longer, because you're not a player any longer, because the player is this avatar, is this tiny little being compared to who you really are, you don't want to play any longer. You don't want to play that game any longer. This is the why. This is the why. And this is why we talk about healing. This is why we talk about deep introspection, why we talk about meditation, expansion of consciousness, raising of consciousness. That is everything. That's the key. None of the other shit really matters. That's it. And we're out of it. And all this will be an episode of an epically horrible computer game that will cease to exist because there's nothing there to power it. Without energy, whatever was there ceases to exist. And it's not the power lines powering it. It's us. We're the energy source. Think about that. This is the greatest news that I could possibly share. And yet, it's the most challenging thing to get across because it's the one thing you can't outsource. It's the one thing you can't vote for. It's the one thing that you can't donate to or volunteer your hours to. It's the one thing that you have to actually remember to be. It's the one thing where you have to, you sit your ass down and you turn everything else off. And you ignore the monkey mind that wants you to do this and that and get busy and all that crap. You sit your ass down and you breathe for minutes, for hours, for days. What does it matter? You breathe until you start feeling something, until you start getting bigger, even though your body doesn't expand, but you become bigger all of a sudden. Your perception of yourself becomes bigger. Your awareness of you becomes grander. Somehow you experience more of you. Now, when that first little tiny experience comes through, it triggers something. You go, holy moly, well, what's going on? I've never felt this before. I've never felt like this. What is this? And keep going. You'll notice that you can keep going for as much as you want to. It'll never stop. There's no end to this. There's no limit to this, which is the point of realizing nothing can touch you when you realize that you're untouchable because you're infinite. What could touch infinity? Nothing. So you have to make infinity forget that it's infinite. That's all. That's all that they did. They made us forget. Unless we remember, that's the only way out. So I'm going to end this here for tonight. I'm going to go rest. And tomorrow, source willing, a new way will be revealed to me of communicating this message over and over and over again. I don't care. I'm not afraid of it. It's what we came here for. It's what we came here for. This is what the greatest beings right now are doing, and not the greatest in the sense of hierarchy, but those who remember the most, they're right now giving their all. They're not holding back. They're visible. They're present. They're out there. They're helping in the best way that they can. They're doing the right thing. And it's folks in every arena, whether it's about helping your body to be at its best so that isn't a big worry, whether it is helping people to become financially free enough to have enough bandwidth and time. So many folks in our arena are they're hating everything that has to do with money and finances, but they're struggling because of that hatred, right? So they're cutting themselves without knowing it, rather than acknowledging this is part of this experience here. Let me create a comfortable experience on that level, so this doesn't bother me any longer, so this isn't a daily grind, right? And so there are people out there who are helping today, so many folks, to create that little bit of independence where money isn't something that is such a daily struggle any longer, so folks can actually be free to meditate, to walk, to pray, to sit in nature, to do the very things that help them remember. And there's folks like Jeffrey and Clayton, the founders of FLFE, who are doing this every day as well. There's so many wonderful people coming together from all arenas right now, and they realize above all else, all we want to do together is help each other remember who we really are. That's the greatest, that's the absolute greatest intention right now. Okay. I think we're complete for now. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. You know, we love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.